All right, continuing on with my series of what's next for Bitcoin. I can't give you any financial advice, Ben, but we've been through the spot ETF already this year in 2024. We've gotten through the halving. I'm about to lay out some key indicators and what has been going on with the market for Bitcoin and give you some really good tips on what to watch for and where Bitcoin is headed next. Well, I'm bringing in the experts via YouTube. So here we go.
I think that what's happening is we're already starting to see a great reset in the prices of these other major asset classes. So Bitcoin is this new nascent asset that's basically starting to soak up purchasing power. And what we saw is this monetary premium that shouldn't have existed, I would argue, on lots of asset classes. Stocks, is you can quibble about, should it be there? Definitely not real estate. Like people using houses as investments and flipping houses. To me, that's just insane. Like we're going to look back at this time period. Like I can't believe we lived through that. Like that's not normal. Gold, I believe, has a monetary premium, and I think we're going to see that shrink over time. And so I think, though, at some point, right, we're always going to have businesses. I think we'll probably always have the ability to invest, at least in our lifetimes, in stocks, so in the equity of companies. But because they're so wildly overvalued, I think relative to Bitcoin, even today, even though they've gone down so much in Bitcoin terms for the first 15 years, I think they have much, much further to fall.
So there's Dr. Jeff Ross, one of my favorites as far as Bitcoin and charting and where it's headed. Just giving you a little bit of up to speed on it. Let's move on and hear from one of my favorite guys who also, I think, explains cryptocurrencies better than anybody else, Mr. Mark Yusko.
A bunch more has come in. Every day that we keep making higher lows and higher highs, there's going to be more accumulation. And, we just had the first red dot on plan B, right? So the red dots are the parabolic move time. And so the next 12 months, I think the next 12 months are going to be truly spectacular. The supply shock happened. And so fair value was in the low 50s. I'll round down to 50. And what a halving does is it doubles the fair value. And you go, well, why? Like, because
you have the supply.
The miners would go out of business if the price didn't increase. So now it's a little different this time because of ordinals and runes and the high transaction fees. So let's say it's not double this time. Let's say it's 80. Okay, so that's a fair value norm. Now here's an interesting thing. If you look at Tim Peterson's Metcalfe's Law model, it says fair value is about 80. If you look at Charles Edwards' model that's based on conversion of electricity to value, so it's a power consumption based on hash rate, says 80. That's interesting. I have this rule. If I hear it once, I remember it. If I hear it twice, I write it down. If I hear it 3 times, I do something about it. So let's say that we got 3 independent theories that all come up with the same fair value, 80K. So we're still below fair value today at 66. So we're going to accrete to fair value. Well, then what's going to happen? Well, then the FOMO is going to start to kick in. Because people are going to see, and look, I said it on a couple of times, this Thanksgiving is going to be the best Thanksgiving in the history of Thanksgivings. I mean, maybe the first one was pretty good too, but this one's going to be amazing because the last few have sucked. Because, you're that guy that's crypto and you're kind of welcome, but you're not really welcome. And depending on when people took your advice or didn't take your advice, this one, everyone's going to love all of us because price is going to be probably touching, 6 digits. Everyone's going to be talking about it. It's going to be everywhere. Every institution's going to own it. Every financial advisor is going to have given in. Even Vanguard's going to have given in. And then you get the final parabolic move through April of next year where, do we hit 150? Do we hit 1? I don't really care. But what I really care about is everyone. And I literally mean everyone, not just American, but everyone globally, getting a wallet, understanding how to own some, opening an account with one of the exchanges around. We've invested in a bunch of them in different places, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia, the Coinbase equivalent. Understanding that this is the greatest savings technology.
There you go.
In mankind, right? And people say, when should you sell your Bitcoin? Like, well, when do you sell your savings? big payment for a house, big payment for college, big payment for starting a business, lending money to somebody. I don't.
A lot to unpack there. 80K is the current fair value that they're finding. And I loved how he said, because I'm very much this way. If I see something, I dig through tons and tons of information constantly because I'm not smart enough to figure out what is what. But if I see it, 3 times, 4 times in different areas, I'm tuning into it. So 80K, they've seen that. He's seen 80K come up several times as the fair value. Today, Bitcoin is at like 64.8 right now. So it's technically undervalued if that happens to be the case. Thanksgiving, typical crypto talk. That's one, if you've been in the crypto circle very long, people talk about Thanksgivings because that's the running joke is, families only get together around Thanksgiving and your crypto dork, relative goes crazy about, you got to buy Bitcoin or you got to buy Solana or you got to buy Doge, Pepe or what, and then it tanks over the next part of the year. So by the time you get back to Thanksgiving, everybody hates you. Well, not this year. The market is headed up. So this year, Thanksgiving is going to be all right. Going to be the hero in the family this year.
All right.
Yeah, boy.
And then, finally, Ben, nearly you're half your life's over and you're finally going to be the man of the family.
Redemption.
Actually, you having your baby, that's what made you popular.
Right. Yeah. It won't have anything to do with my crypto.
But everybody's going to be getting involved. And you and I know this. It's still yet to be seen. And so going to wrap this video up with Bob Loukas, who gets into the charts. This is another, if you want to call him an expert, I hate using those words, but just does a dynamic job of explaining. And he's going to talk about what to start watching for here in 2024 for possible, uptick in Bitcoin and crypto from there. So here we go.
I want to talk today about this mid-cycle reaccumulation zone that we're seeing. Basically, what that is about is we hit an all-time high, an ETF was released, and there's been a period here of profit-taking of whales from prior cycles who are getting out now at a higher level and cashing in. And we also have a lot of trapped longs from the last cycle that are finally making whole or being made whole by selling at this higher level. But I think this is just a reaccumulation zone, and I believe we're building a solid base from which the next portion or the second half of the rising portion of this cycle will be built on. And then I just, again, on the sentiment theme right here, it's always darkest before dawn. And the fact that Bitcoin is only down some 15% off the highs, to see the divergence in sentiment that we're seeing versus where Bitcoin stands today, I think is an opportunity more than anything else. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the psychology of holding a big position, a profitable position at this point in the cycle, and not to be afraid. And also touch on sort of this left-right translated cycle idea. In the last video, we had come off this amazing run since October of 2023, and it was pointing a lot towards a left translated cycle that was developing. That fortunately doesn't seem to be playing out. We stopped short of going into kind of a blow-off move, and that's good. We should be encouraged by the idea that we are allowing the market is sort of moving sideways and allowing for a reaccumulation, a reset here that is going to lead towards a more sustainable path in the rest of 2024 into 2025, which I believe is forming now more towards a right translated cycle for this 4-year cycle. So let's get in.
Okay, so what Bob is talking about there is, Bitcoin has kind of come down. We're at 64.8 today. It's actually decreased over the last multiple weeks. He's saying that's an accumulation cycle. You've got a lot of people with that own a considerable amount of Bitcoin that have decided to kind of sell some of it off. You've got some longs that are processing, getting liquidated. So we're seeing this, what they call an accumulation zone. And he's going to show a chart here and that will help. But we're in this accumulation zone, which is a good thing. It's basically building up steam for, a huge increase in the months coming up and into next year as we enter this second, this latter half of the 4-year business cycle. So we're just getting into the point where we want to see things really take off. The other key thing here that he's saying is a lot of people were calling for a left translated cycle, which just means basically Bitcoin or crypto takes off faster than the typical 4-year cycle, right? Normally next year is when we would see the huge, the end of this year into next year, see the huge increases. A lot of people were saying, nope, we're going to see it this year with the ETFs and the halving and all that stuff. He's basically ruling that out now, for the most part, that we're not going to see that basically, and putting it simply, this is looking more like a regular business cycle as far as financial markets and Bitcoin and crypto. It's not looking like we're going to see a blow off top. It's looking like this is going to do what it's supposed to do and build up steam and then possibly get going.
As you can see, working on a third straight month of moving sideways. In prior moves, when it hit that all-time high level, it kind of went straight through. A little bit of a consolidation back in 2017, but still moved from that point forward. So the key takeaway here is that every time Bitcoin has reached an all-time high, it's possibly paused for a little bit, but then it's moved on to make its sort of final run towards a peak in the 4-year cycle. Right here, though, what we have today is we're sitting on only month 19 of the cycle, still around 4 to 5 months short of where prior cycles hit that all-time high and went on to go towards the all-time high level. So what we're seeing here is the market peaked. Here's a simple RSI measurement, hit a little bit of overbought levels, but pulled back. And that's important because this indicates that the market wants to consolidate, wants to take it a little bit slower before making that run through all-time high levels and up towards a peak in the cycle. The longer this can consolidate and move sideways, the better this will be for a more sustainable 4-year cycle move.
So there you go. Just a different way of explaining that basically Bitcoin is accumulating at this point, and that's a good thing. We want it to keep building up steam, just kind of trucking along, not doing anything crazy, which is typical during this time of the summer and this time of the business cycle. And then we look for the pump.
If we look at this period right here and overlay it right here, I'm not a huge fan of the fractals, but in this case, I think it is relevant. If you look at kind of this base and move it over here, then you'll see that it does overlay fairly nicely, but it also points to the possibility that we're going to have to see this market trend sideways for a significant amount of time, all the way into July, August, and not until September before this base can complete, which would then allow for the market to make and begin its second half of the cycle. Also, another reason why this could be something we are going to see over the summer months. Typically, summer in general is fairly quiet. Also for Bitcoin, seasonality-wise, it's a quiet period. And when you look at the 4-year cycle, there's still a lot of time before we can expect that peak in the cycle on a traditional right translated cycle basis. Okay,
so one of the keys I want you to key in on there was he said September, as he kind of drew out this he called it a fractal where you overlay, which this is, it is what it is. It's not a guarantee by any stretch. It's just a way of measuring, but he measures it out, and the timing based on typical business cycles puts us in around September. So basically going sideways until we get in about September, and then we start to see increases. What else is going on in around that time, or is predicted to go on around that time, that changes everything as far as these markets? Interest rate cuts. As of right now, September is what's looking like is most likely going to be the first interest rate cut too. Interest rate cuts, we get liquidity over a period of time, slowly, but then more aggressively. So liquidity, that's what pushes market. So all of these little things are tying in, kind of like my prior video to this. I was talking about Mark Yusko, how if he sees things, the first time he thinks, well, that's interesting. The second time he writes it down. If he sees the same thing a third time or hears it third time, then he gets involved. Same thing here. September keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. It keeps coming up as being the month where we might start to see things really go. Is that going to be the case? Who knows? It could be tomorrow. It could be next year. We don't know. But like they say, the markets don't repeat, but they do rhyme. And if you have multiple so-called experts saying this is what we're seeing, then that's a pretty good idea to at least be following it, at least in my opinion. Yeah. From there, does it, you ask Dr. Jeff Ross, we're going to end up at $475,000 by the end of the cycle next year. Other people say 150. Was it Raul Paul says anywhere from 250 to 500?
Yeah,
and then you have people say, well, we might make it to 80.
He said, Raul Paul said 400 to 500,000, and even if he was wrong by 50%, you're looking at a $200,000 Bitcoin. So,
which FYI, he's generally never that wrong.
right.
He's very conservative. All right. Well, that's what I got on what's next on Bitcoin. Don't let the declines and the choppiness scare you right now. I know it's summertime. Enjoy the sun, have some fun, but you better be paying attention to the markets also. I know I am.